success is not just being busy. Success is designing a summer that aligns to the things you said were going to be important. Part of that is clarifying these are our big rocks for the summer, the things that we're going to prioritize. Welcome to The Growth Project, a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. In the studio today, Dr. Drew Brannon, joined by Dr. Milt Lowder. Welcome to the show.
Oh, yeah. This temporary lush studio we're in. You know, what did John Wooden say? Things that turn out best for those who make the best of how things turn out. So we're making the most of what we got.
Never heard you offer a John Wooden quote
Never
before.
in your life.
What a great beginning.
I just heard. I just found out who he was.
What a great beginning to this conversation. No, but excited to get into this one today. And, you know, sometimes I think the topics that we cover sync up to where we are in the calendar, and sometimes they don't, but this one does. And I think there's a reason why we try to do that. And we know that as our listeners are going through your day, your week, your month, your year, part of what you begin thinking about is like, well, where am I in the year and what's happening and what's current and that type of stuff. So I don't have a song to play to like bring us into the summer here. Although, what would be the one? What would be the summer song?
I'll throw out my first cassette I ever bought in 6th grade. Bryan Adams' "Summer of '69." Oh yeah, that's the first. Well, that's the first thing that came to mind.
Those of you that can hear the chorus in that one, we encourage you to just go for it fully.
But what I like about this, Drew, and especially doing the podcast with you, because you're very intentional and thoughtful about not wasting a moment. And it's so easy to kind of see the summer as just that gap between one school year to the next, and not think meaningfully and deeply around, okay, this is the most time we'll have with our children this year if they're in school. Mm-hmm. We'll probably have the most interaction. They may go off to camp. They may do some different things. But how do we want to look back when the summer is over and not regret that we didn't create the experiences? We weren't thoughtful about what do we want our children to grow? How do we empower them? How do they grow mentally and physically and spiritually and emotionally and relationally and behaviorally? And most of us are looking up, it's May. It's like, okay, I just had one college graduation personally for me. I've got another high school graduation. There's parties all during the month of May. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, August rolls around again, and you've just been reactive to the calendar.
Totally. Yeah, so we want to talk about how do you design a summer that you feel great about, meaning, as you said, it has purpose to it along the whole continuum, that like we have fun, we do things that are meaningful, we make memories, but that, again, I'll come back to that word, that you feel like you've got purpose to this opportunity. Yeah. And, you know, even before we jump into it, want to acknowledge several things here, beginning with, we know that some of our listeners don't even have kids, which, you know, so you don't think of the summer maybe as that different from the other months of the year, but maybe you could, right? I think typically, regardless of your professional situation, summer can be a time where you have a little more margin, a little more opportunity. So maybe there's a way you could be thinking about your summer a little more intentionally than you would some other months of the year. And then those of you that do have kids, we realize that we kind of cover the whole gamut as far as parents go. Some folks are both mom and dad are working, and the summer's kind of a headache, if we're being honest, because you're having to figure out, well, what do we do with the kids? And so we want to be able to give you some thoughts and ideas for how you still make it a great summer. And then other scenarios are where maybe both parents are not working, and this might be a really useful conversation for you because you've got more margin than other situations to put some things into play.
Yeah, so I think wherever that you find you, wherever life has you, whatever hand you've been dealt, whatever stage of life you're in, I think this is a time for just to pause and reflect, like think through our growth process. We want you to be more aware of what are some things you can do proactively, what actions can you take, and then how can you hold yourself accountable to what you set out to accomplish. And to take the pressure off of it has to be a certain way. I think so many of us go through life just doing things the way we've always done them, the way we were raised, the way we were brought up, or living up, well, here's what social media says you have to do. And at AMPLOS, we're all about empowering you to decide what kind of life do you want to lead. And this just summer is a microcosm of how do we take advantage of maybe a different pace, a different feel.
Yeah. One final just comment before we jump into things here. I remember, although it was a really long time ago, when our kids began to get old enough to even know that summer was a thing, as soon as they got out of school, and your kids probably did this too, they would ask me, Dad,
Yeah.
do you still work in the summer?
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a yes, and still is.
It took a while for my kids to figure out, like, I didn't get out of school we were still going to work.
Still working in the summer, which is all the more reason to be having this conversation, right? Because there's plenty of things still competing for your attention. So how do you design a great summer?
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it. And we kind of want our thesis question to be this for parents: when the summer ends, how do we want our family to be different? And then I'll kind of tack on a little footnote here too. What are the things we want to be true about how it went down? Meaning, hey, we made these memories, we did these things, we went to these places, we upheld these standards, whatever it is. So how do we want to be different? And what do we want to be true in terms of how it went down?
Yeah, I think maybe go back to even reflect back to last summer to set the stage for you. Is like, what was last summer? Like, what do you remember?
Yeah.
And I think, too many times in America that we put so much pressure on a vacation when I know what you and I enjoyed most when our children were little were those little moments in between. The daily routine of the summer, the feel, they're in the pool, maybe they're playing golf, maybe it's just daylight savings time, we got a family wiffle ball game going on at night. So I think go back to last summer and just kind of ask yourself, well, what did that feel like? What did I regret? What I wish I would have done differently? And maybe that'll set the stage of how do you want to finish that sentence at the end of this summer?
Yeah. Yeah. So start with some good questions. And then we want to kind of build a little bit of a framework as we go through this. Begin to thinking about establishing some categories.
Yeah.
And not every family will have the same categories, nor will every family have the same number of categories. But when we say categories, what we mean are things such as relational, meaning ways in which we want to really connect us this summer, maybe connect with others as well, or in addition to that, right? Another one would be emotional and mental. How rested do we want to feel as a result of this summer? How can we develop more confidence throughout the course of the summer? And then a third one I'll offer would just be, growth oriented. How do we, what are some things we want to do this summer to help us grow and develop? And that could be so many different things. It could be something kind of fun of like, hey, we're gonna learn something new this summer.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna either maybe it's someone in the family, maybe it's more than one person in the family. Of we're gonna pick up a new skill. I'm gonna learn how to do this. I'm gonna learn how to whatever it is.
And what I think all these categories allow you to do, it informs your decision making. Instead of just throwing darts and hoping our children are going to catch what we're trying to deliver, that we have a game plan of here's how we want to connect. And I know like that relational piece, Drew, is so important as your children, age, they start speaking a different language. They have different interests. They have different priorities. And as parents, you want to make sure you have your finger on the pulse of how can I communicate in them a way that really connects? How can I speak their language? Mm-hmm. And what my children enjoyed at 6 is different than what they enjoy at 16.
For sure.
And, Mike Noonan says this so well, the soccer coach at Clemson, about, in his profession, the players have stayed the same ages, but he's changed. He's the one who's aged. So he's always trying to find ways to create ways to stay relevant with this new generation. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we do that a lot in our work, but maybe not enough for our families.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very, very true. And so I think let's mention this too, as we're getting into talking about how you're setting this up. Be clear from the beginning, the goal here is not to go design an extremely busy summer.
Yeah.
That is not what we're saying. On the other hand, do we think that it's a great idea to just have this like completely blank canvas every day where you're not really trying to thoughtfully plug in some gaps? I wouldn't recommend that either.
No. But to me, one of the things we know, like a great growth area for young children, is the ability to develop critical thinking skills. And we've got children now that their lives are so overscheduled and overstructured. Think about what is one of the complaints about this generation? They're the most overcoached generation ever. And so there's a balance and routine about being overscheduled and creating some kind of structure and rhythm, and also giving them the freedom to make some decisions. Yeah. Kind of narrow it down to one or two, okay? Depending on your child's age, they may be at a stage where they can either work or they can play a sport. or they're going to be on a swim team, or they have some unstructured play. They got to get out of the house. Mm-hmm. It can be very simple, but empowering them to make decisions and get outside and just play on their own without you solving their problems, that could be a very worthy goal for you and your family this summer.
Yeah. Yeah, so the things we're talking about here of helping you kind of build your framework really kind of lead you into then, well, this is a phrase that's not unique to us. We've all kind of heard it. What are your big rocks going to be? Like, how do you identify what are your big rocks? And they need to align to, we're saying success is not just being busy. Success is designing a summer that aligns to the things you said were going to be important. Part of that is clarifying these are our big rocks for the summer, the things that we're going to prioritize.
And it could be as simple as you asking each person in the family, hey, this summer will be successful if.
Yeah, it's a great question.
And then that can help you identify what's important to them. And then like the concept of the big rocks is, okay, which rocks is each person going to take ownership of? Mm-hmm. And depending on the ages of your children, depending on the stage of life you're in, everybody makes a commitment and ownership that, hey, these are important and they should be consistent with your vision for your family and the values that you want your children to understand and live by.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to give a concrete example of that, you might have a big rock. Maybe your kids are say, you have some elementary school age kids. That's a really important age for kids to be learning responsibility.
Yes.
And so it might be that, all right, hey, although it's harder during the school year for you to do tasks A, B, and C around the house, of like, guess what? We're going to make a chart and like, you're in charge of this every week. And then maybe with your older kids, it's like, hey, guess what? You're cooking dinner once a week.
Yeah.
And, things like that, but make plans where people can grow in responsibility. That only happens through doing stuff.
Yeah. And so just think, if your goal is to build their self-efficacy, not their self-esteem, you give them opportunities to show that you believe in them. And now you got to take the pressure off of your perfectionism and the way it should be.
Yeah. Oh, man.
You got to let them figure out how to do it themselves. But one of the ways that we ruin children is we try to build their self-esteem instead of their self-efficacy. And those mastery experiences, vicarious experiences, I think these are opportunities that you get to do in the summer that we're going to all risk and grow in a certain area.
Yeah. I've made some mistakes in this department over time. Believe it or not, one I'm thinking of right now is, for whatever reason, I thought it was important for our kids to empty and load the dishwasher probably long before they were ready for that.
Yeah.
And so to your point, I definitely had to at first, stage one was like letting go of the perfectionism, like how the dishwasher should be loaded. But then it was acknowledging that they're not ready to load the dishwasher.
Yeah. And so again, that's where having your finger on the pulse of your children, like, what can they do?
Yeah. What are they ready to do?
Yeah.
Not quite ready
Yeah.
to do?
Meet them where they are. That's a great example.
But teenagers are ready.
Yeah. Just because apathy does not mean they can't do it just because they're apathetic.
Yeah, they're ready.
One of the things, Drew, is we're talking about, what did Warren Buffett say? One of the keys to successful people is knowing what to say no to.
Yeah.
And so kind of if you clarify, hey, here are the big rocks, here are the things that, hey, we're going to do to win the summer, then what are we saying yes to means we got to say no to something else. Mm-hmm. And I can fall. I know you're shocked. I like it all. I love to say, okay, let's soak it all up, but that also comes at a cost.
Oh yeah, yeah. So that goes back to what we said about a busy summer isn't necessarily a successful summer. The summer is a great time to say no. I feel like so many things in the summer are optional.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't know if they're always like psychologically optional.
No. Was it you and I that did the podcast? What are you teaching your children?
Without teaching your
the
children.
Invisible curriculum.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we think about that happiness comes from experiences, or you have to be able to do this, or you should be able to get to do this. And we kind of keep pushing this happiness piece. And so you're modeling, you got to be going all the time, and not realizing that it's okay to rest.
One of the things that is normal to happen to a family during the summer is because your whole plan and structure and routine is just blown up, you struggle. And I think it's normal, as you said, the month of May can often be full of like so many different things of like all these end of year, you name it. And you get to on the other side of that, and I think it's normal for families to be like, I just want everybody to leave me alone.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to show up to anything
Yeah.
or do anything or be on time for anything. Just leave me alone. And that's really normal. And maybe even like a good idea for the immediately after that as you begin your summer. But I wouldn't stick with that plan. So let's talk a little bit about like, what are your thoughts on what the right type of routine is and why you need a routine without getting rigid?
Yeah, I think that's so easy that the routine is disrupted and it's kind of all or nothing, like you're saying. Like the school year is the calendar and the schedule dictates the routine or the sports. Mm-hmm. And so what we see a lot of times, it's all or nothing. And so then there's absolute freedom. And I always believe creativity without structure leads to chaos. And nobody's growing. Nobody knows what anybody else is doing. Creativity within the right structure leads to freedom and innovation and growth. Yeah. And so that's where you got to find that harmony of what's a cadence, what's a rhythm. It's easy to say, oh, my child's so tired. He's worked so hard this summer. He needs to sleep in till 10 o'clock. And then you're setting that rhythm and that cadence of there's like next thing you know, it's July. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what you're saying is fight that tendency to make it all or nothing and say, okay, how can it feel different without some of the extra stress and pressure? But if things are optional, what are the things that are non-negotiable that you put some parameters in place for you and your family so that reduces the frustration that comes from unmet expectation or unspoken expectations? Yeah.
And we're just talking about simple things, like something as simple as we're going to have an understanding in our house that every morning in the summer, you're going to get up and you're going to move in some way. Yeah. Now, that's easy if you have practice, but you might not have practice. But you're going to move, which could be so many different things of like, hey, you're going to get up in the morning and maybe you're going to go exercise. Maybe you're going to move and that you're going to get going on things around the house that we need you to do. You're going to do laundry. You're going to go outside and cut the grass. You're like, what are you going to do? Yeah. But like every morning we're going to get up and we're going to move and immediately have some purpose and some structure to our day.
Yeah. And then, to end the day, like maybe it's a family meal.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going to sit down and eat together. Maybe we're going to have a family movie night. Our nights were kind of those games. It was football or wiffle ball or basketball or a made up game that I created. And that was part of the day. We're going to have a fun day when Dad gets home. Mm-hmm. But I think it doesn't have to be complex.
No.
But there has to be some structure.
Right. Yeah. And just, you might even try to build in some weekly rhythms too of like, hey, on Wednesdays, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
We're gonna volunteer or do some service type thing. Or on Wednesday nights, we're gonna have our neighbors over and we're gonna order pizza and we're gonna rotate who comes over. So there's so many things you can do, but build some weekly rhythms.
And I think part of like the big battle that you and I didn't have to worry about growing up is just screen time.
Yeah.
And parents we can overindulge our children with screen time. But I think setting up a schedule and expectation of screen time, and maybe you're a little bit more lax than you are in the school year, but hold firm and fast.
That feels like a podcast in and of itself.
Yeah.
I'm not the one to be on.
No, you and I are probably a little bit more old school than the rest. But especially your children, what helps remove some anxiety is just knowing what's expected. Mm-hmm. And none of us have the willpower to make the right decision every time. And so a little bit of structure that facilitates the decision-making process. Here are the things I have to do. Here are the non-negotiables. No matter what, here's what we're doing as a family. But that list has to be pretty small.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think on the screen time when just having some clarity around what are the points in the day when it's a green light and you're fine to be on your device, and then what are the parts of the day where it isn't? And we don't want to see you looking at your phone or do anything like that, because in the absence of that, you can rack up some screen time numbers.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what's best for anybody. And that's not you and I giving our opinion. That's what the literature says.
Yeah, the research supports it.
About screens and the way it impacts our mental and emotional well-being.
And go back to what you said, how does that impact my child's growth mentally, physically, emotionally? How does it impact our relationships? Or those are the success factors that we talked about in the beginning. With these behaviors, how does that support that, or how does that take away from that?
Yeah. So even just to kind of close the loop on this example of like building structure, if you have a very simple plan, like what if each person in your family for the summer was willing to take on kind of the challenge of, hey, one thing to learn, one thing to build, one way to contribute.
Yeah.
So, hey, like and one thing to learn could be, here are the books I'm going to read. Here, right?
I'm laughing about the summer reading for my children. They did not love popular. That. No, but
it doesn't have to be that. It could be, I'm going to learn how to play the guitar. I'm going to learn how to plant a garden. I'm going to like one thing to learn, one habit to build. Those could kind of be one and the same.
Yes.
And the last one is there one way to contribute. So what's my contribution going to be to the family on a consistent basis? Not in a way where mom or dad or mom and dad have to basically, badger me to do what I said I would do.
Yeah. And so to me, that's like, how do you get buy-in? We just think about it in corporate culture. How do you give people the perception that they have a choice? And you have them write it down. You have them take ownership. You catch people doing something right when they're trying to learn that task, when they're trying to build that habit, when they're contributing in a meaningful way. You talk about building a child's self-efficacy is letting them take ownership of here's what I want to learn, here's what I want to build, and here's what I want to contribute. And then they do it.
Yeah.
Like that's a win for a summer in and of itself.
That'd be a great summer.
Yeah.
Goal.
Just
you
hammer.
Just did that one thing.
Yeah. Yeah, take everything else out and think about this.
All right, let's talk about boredom. It's normal in the summer, happens all the time, for sometimes it's the kids, sometimes it's parents and kids to say, I'm kind of bored. Is that good or bad?
Well, there's a lot of different ways I can go. My first thought is, like, where's the continuum of boredom?
Yeah, it's not one or the other.
We're in such a oversaturated, overstimulated environment that I think the pendulum has shifted. I know what my parents' response would be if I said I was bored. That would be quite different on the farm in Oswego, South Carolina, than maybe what my response has been, because somehow we've taken on the burden as parents to fulfill our child's happiness, to make them never feel bored, never feel like they're less than, never feel overwhelmed, never feel anxious. We've spent so much time trying to protect them that we unintentionally overschedule them to make up for the boredom.
Or to like reduce the likelihood anybody gets bored, like boredom prevention.
Yeah, and so to me, giving the brain time to think, giving the brain time to rest, maybe is where we're going, is we're rethinking boredom is how can that allow for some time just to rest and recover.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that in our experience with our kids, and they're obviously older than they once were, but I can't think of a situation where when we removed the things that they wanted, such as a phone, an Xbox, like it's like, hey, you have none of that. You got to figure it out. They almost always moved into doing something, but my reaction became, that's exactly why you can't have your phone. Yeah. Because that's really good.
Yeah. Spontaneous.
Whatever it was, whether it was like, hey, they made up this game, or they decided to go knock on doors and ask if they could rake leaves, or like they figured something out, and it was way better than what they were doing when I got my attention.
Yeah. And so to me, I think that's where boredom drives them, but what you did is different than what most parents do. You put the burden on them.
Oh yeah, figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, you put the burden on them, and when parents hear I'm so bored, the world we're in now, that interpretation from a cognitive perspective is like, well, we must be doing something wrong as a parents. We got to fight those cognitive distortions that my child always has to be happy, they always have to be busy, they can't be bored, they can't miss out. If we don't challenge some of those lies we've told ourselves over the years, we won't ever make some of the changes you're talking about.
Yeah, no. I mean, one of the most important things that parents need to do for the summer, if you think it's your responsibility for your kid to have fun all the time, that's a problem.
Yes.
That is going to be stressful.
Yeah, you are not responsible for your child's happiness.
Yeah, that is not how you should be thinking about it.
And so this harmony, we talk about work-life balance, Drew, where there's, like, that word just reminds me that I'm out of balance. And so harmony is a word that kind of has resonated in my heart and my mind. And so what we're talking about is, you said earlier, can I have rules without being rigid? Can I find ways to connect without being overscheduled? This harmony that we're talking about, like, how do we learn just to be present? What are some things, like if that's a goal for the summer, it's like I just want to be more present. We talked about removing phones. We talked about creating those meaningful moments through the week, or maybe family movie night, or maybe dinner. Just being present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's all about the conditions, right? So I think it'll come down to one of the huge one is that you've already said it, of putting your phone somewhere else or creating a way for it to not be a distraction, and then creating a schedule or a plan that gives you a chance to accomplish the goals that you have. If being present is one of them, then that means don't overstuff the calendar.
Yeah.
But have a thoughtful approach to what we're trying to do, and find a way for people to be bought into it and explain it, right? So this will sound a little bit rigid in and of itself, and for the record, my family would not enjoy this, but have let's sit down as a family before the summer starts and have a conversation led by parents of like, hey guys, here's how we're thinking about the summer.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't done things this way in the past, no one's going to understand what's happening. And it's going to be very unfamiliar and confusing to the family. So I would suggest, here's the phrase, family meeting. Right?
Yeah.
Family meeting time.
Family meeting.
Everybody on the couch.
Family meeting.
Don't be afraid to go for the family meeting to set this whole thing up.
Yeah, and I think, but it's back to you taking ownership of how do we want it to be? What memories do we want to create? Not what the world suggests we have to have. And then having the courage to have that conversation. It's like, we're going to do things a little bit different this summer. We want to be proactive. What do you want to get out of it? What's important for you? How do you want to grow? And then let's build this together. Mm-hmm. And you would be amazed to watch your children take ownership and hold you accountable to it.
Yeah. Well, and if you need some added motivation or incentive for parents, to clarity-wise, this is not good news for you or me as our kids get older, but people probably realize this. I think it's the last numbers I saw were 93%. So 93% of the time you will spend with each of your kids will occur prior to them leaving to go to college and throughout their lifetime.
Yeah. And so if 93% of our time is with our children before they go to college, then to me, then I better make the most of the time I have.
Yeah, and have a plan.
And have a plan that I can execute so I don't look back and wish I could have when I should have. I think that's what kind of sticks out to me. And so this podcast is to encourage you to think a little bit differently of how do you want to spend your time? And are you being proactive and intentional about what lessons you're teaching your children?
Yeah.
And what do you truly value?
Right. Yeah, and hopefully we want to challenge you to look at the summer as just a prime time to do those things. It's such a great opportunity. You think there's so many things off the table from a distraction standpoint in the summer, and that's really that's the point of all this. Is it's just such a fertile ground to do some things that are much more difficult to do when it's the school year.
And I love what you said earlier, and I think that's maybe my takeaway is most everything you're doing this summer is optional.
Yeah.
Now again, your situation, your children may have to, you may both be working. It may be a really busy time. There may be a lot of demands, but those optional activities, that means you have freedom to choose. Mm-hmm. And so I would just encourage you, choose wisely based on how do you want the summer to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just to we realize, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, that not everybody is in a precise situation like this. And so maybe you don't have kids. And I think, what a great opportunity still to make some memories, whether that be travel, whether that be, I tell you, people that do have kids sure would appreciate some help in the summer from people that don't. Yeah. So it's a great opportunity to also offer your time in the way of service to people who could use maybe a helping hand.
Or even, for if you're single, the questions we asked you, how do you want to grow this summer? What's one habit you really want to build? And, this summer will be successful if these lessons
apply to everybody.
Yeah, they apply to everybody. Just the lens was, okay, my kids are out of school. I was laughing earlier about our clinical practice. May was the time when you never saw anybody because everybody was gone and busy. And so we're just trying to encourage you to take ownership, be proactive, and be intentional about how you spend your time this summer.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody will be able to kind of digest and figure out what this conversation means to you, wherever you find yourself, whatever your situation might be. And we'll be with you through the summer. We won't be closing down shop.
Yes.
We aren't going anywhere because, we do still work in the summer.
Yeah, that's never changed. So, hey, as always, Drew, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate you, our listeners. Thanks for giving us a chance to be relevant in your life. We encourage you, please follow us on the appropriate channels. But send us any questions or thoughts you may have. What's worked for you in the summer? What hasn't worked? Or topics that you might want us to discuss on the Growth Project. So, till we see you again, and continue to pursue better and be better.
Thanks so much.